You may remember it as the seemingly innocent 1997 children's program from your childhood, or if you're a parent, maybe the 2015 reboot is what you're familiar with. But like many properties that most associate with happy memories of youth, Teletubbies has taken on a much more sinister reputation in the age of creepypasta and mascot horror. From disturbing videos to unhinged fan theories to an inevitable mascot horror game, in this video I'll be analyzing the sickening world of Teletubby horror. To learn about the actual banned episode deemed too scary for public consumption, stick around to the end of this video. This video is sponsored by Trainwell. I'm not going back and watching the Teletubbies at all to make this. I watched iCarly. I actually enjoyed watching iCarly, but I'm not watching the Teletubbies. I was 4 when it came out, so I was already kind of too old for it. I was more of an Arthur kid. But my sister was born in 1998, and as a kid, there were 2 TVs in my house, and one of them was in my parents' room. And I was 4 to 8 years old when the show was on. I wasn't so aged out of it that I couldn't stand to watch an episode. It definitely wasn't my first choice if my sister wasn't there, but I have seen full episodes of Teletubbies by proxy. Okay, I have actually seen full episodes of Caillou. I have endured things that you can't possibly imagine. That insufferable, ungrateful, cancerous little bald piece of... But despite having seen a fair share of the show, I couldn't tell you the plot of a single episode. Sure, I remember their routine of waking up the baby son, introducing themselves. I remember all their names. I remember the voices coming out of these farting speakers. And then they would always go to the hill and eat toast. And then the vacuum cleaner would come and eat everything. And he was the best character. He was basically like their pet. And then the sun would set and they would say goodbye. Looking it up now, there were 365 episodes of this thing. Why? That's insane. Most kids shows don't run that long because after you've produced like 100 episodes, your initial audience is too old for it. And you can just start showing reruns of the beginning of the series to the next batch of babies. Hell, a lot of the time they can just produce less than that because the babies love watching the same mindless crap over and over again. Later on in my research for this video, I discovered why there are so many. Each episode is comprised of a series of segments, and each segment could be stitched into several episodes, allowing them to recycle content and make more episodes on the cheap. So I imagine the episode count is a result of all the combinations of segments that they do. Why am I telling you this? It's gonna come into play later when I talk about the banned episodes. But first, let's start with the basics. Teletubby horror on YouTube. When I searched up Teletubbies horror, I came across this video, Britain's Got Talent 2022 Teletubbies Performance, and I opened it thinking that it would be some sort of uncanny valley effect, like how Mickey Mouse works as a cartoon, but early versions of the costume in real life were just kinda creepy, and it took a few versions for them to get it right. A lot of cartoon mascots can just look a little scary when subjected to 3-dimensional costumes and realistic lighting.
Let's go!
But in watching this Teletubbies clip, that didn't seem to be the case, which probably makes sense. The show was live action, so the Teletubbies were already created with the idea that they would be on camera without looking creepy, until you get to the end. There's this part where one of the judges goes on stage to partake in a group hug with the Tubbies. Can I call them that? And there is something off-putting about seeing them in frame with other people. For one, they kind of look like aliens, and for two, they are huge. Which I kind of knew. It's a popular trivia item that they had to fit adults in the costumes for filming. So they made everything else on set big and used forced perspective to make them look less intimidating. This also means that they had to make the flowers and the rabbits running around the hills bigger. So they used a Dutch breed of rabbit called Flemish Giants, which can grow up to 4 feet or 1.29 meters long and weigh up to 50 pounds, according to Guinness World Records. Which is kinda nightmarish, actually.
Aww.
Even here, though, it mostly doesn't come off as scary in my opinion, though there are a few moments. Like if you pause right here, it looks like Tinky Winky is about to reenact the bite of 87. And when they do the hug, they don't just hug normally, they huddle around him and shake their hips the whole time. It reminds me of that bit I did in my Grimace video about the sailors wandering into caves on Grimace Island and stumbling into a huddle of grimaces. You just gotta throw in a filter and some sound effects to turn this into straight nightmare fuel. In fact, right here, it looks like Tinky Winky is whispering something in his ear as he grimaces.
Don't even think about trying to escape, Simon. These antennae are not just for show. We will track your position, and we will find you. We Teletubbies are a proud race, and we will not show mercy.
So Simon Cowell is 5'8", which makes Tinky Winky about 6'8", with an Autobot caliber dump truck full of cake and peach emojis, and lots of other words you thought you would probably never hear on my channel. Playing into the size of the Teletubbies to help induce horror seems to be a common theme in the Teletubby horror genre. Can't believe I just said that. This animation, If Teletubbies Was Horror by The Weekend Geek, sees a group of mercenaries invade Teletubbyland after dark with a mission to eliminate any life.
We knew something was up. We just didn't expect it to be this. The Teletubby. It couldn't be. It stood over 8 feet tall, staring at us, not even blinking. It was nothing like I remembered from my childhood.
The video is only a little over a minute long, but it brings up a lot of interesting questions. For the longest time, I was just winging it at the gym and slowly making progress, but I noticed that most everyone else had a personal trainer or program that they followed. So when Trainwell reached out to sponsor a video, I was excited to try it out. Trainwell is formerly known as Copilot. For those not familiar, Trainwell is your virtual personal trainer, combining the personalization and accountability of a human expert with the flexibility of a guided workout on your device. So here's what my experience was like. It starts with an onboarding call with your trainer. My dude was named Ryan, and he asked me about my goals, my current routine, and took note of what equipment I have available in my gym. And this is maybe the coolest part about the service. It's custom tailored to your life. So no matter how big your gym is, or if you're just exercising at home, you know that you're getting a balanced workout. It tells you exactly what to do in the app, shows you demonstrations of the correct form, and even times out your rest between sets, taking the guesswork out of your exercise. I tend to fit my gym sessions in at weird and random times, so this was perfect for me. You have the option to give feedback after each set, and your trainer will make any adjustments before the next one. My absolute favorite feature, though, is that you can have music playing, and it'll lower the volume to give you instructions, just like a GPS navigation app. It's actually the #1 reason that I never hired a trainer before this. I gotta have music playing when I work out. I can personally already feel the difference that this routine is making, and you can get in on it too, because Trainwell is giving you 14 days free with your own personal trainer. Just visit my link in the description to get started. The narrator of If Teletubbies Was a Horror mentions the Teletubby being different from his childhood memories, which suggests that the Teletubbies are real. So is the children's show just an interpretation, or is it actual footage of the Teletubbies? If it's an interpretation, it would be like a lot of kids' shows with anthropomorphic characters. For example, the Berenstain Bears is about a family of bears made to look cute and friendly, even calling attention to their human qualities in the theme song.
There are a lot of people, only more so.
Which doesn't make any sense, by the way. But in reality, bears are some of the most vicious killing machines that nature has to offer. Clearly, the femcel TikTok crowd has never seen The Revenant. Another example is Cars. The movie makes them out to be lovable rednecks who love racing, but in reality, cars are the most vicious killing machines that the planet has to offer. So maybe someone discovered the Teletubbies' home, saw the horrific things that they're capable of, somehow got out alive, and decided to follow the tried and true formula of adapting the horror into kids' programming. The alternative is that the Teletubbies show actually just features footage of what the Teletubbies are actually like. It would be very similar to Yo Lila Lila, an episode of Futurama where Turanga Lila accidentally discovers a planet full of bright, colorful characters who sing songs containing basic moral lessons for toddlers, and basically just plagiarizes their lives as the basis for a popular children's show.
Did somebody say monsters?
This will make a great episode, but talk slower. I can't type that fast.
If that's the case, then why does Dipsy look like a bloodthirsty maniac in this animation? I may have the answer. The animation appears to take place at night. As far as I know, in the show, we never see Teletubbyland at night. Every episode begins with the sun baby rising, and every episode ends with the sunset, leading me to believe that there was a very strict rule in place forbidding them from ever being seen after dark. I would assume that the reason for this is the uncanny valley thing that I was mentioning earlier. They probably just look kind of creepy when you put them in the dark. Just to check, I tried looking up Teletubbies at night, because again, I'm not watching any Teletubbies episodes to make this video. And the only thing that returned was this image from the Mega Big Teletubbies fan Twitter account. Let me guess. Age 23, male, random archived item collector. Why does nothing surprise me after learning about the bronies? Anyway, the image caption reads, the one behind the scenes photo of the exclusive nighttime event, but as a promotional image. However, if you look closer, it's clearly fake, it's photoshopped. Not sure what our guy was trying to do here. But given that we've never actually seen them at night, maybe it's not just because they look creepy in the dark. Maybe they transform into terrifying versions of themselves after dark, like Jerry Dandridge from Fright Night, or the Remlets from Skyward Sword, or your ex-girlfriend after you took her to see The Bourne Supremacy instead of The Notebook. When we see a clear shot of the green Teletubby Dipsy, we're pierced with yellow eyes peering out from vertical eye slots, those long teeth, almost exactly like the mouth of Huggy Wuggy from Poppy Playtime, and giant ears. The Teletubbies typically have large ears, which is part of what makes them look more cute and kid-like, as if their heads hadn't grown to fit their ear sizes yet. But we never considered that the large ears could actually be for hunting, to help them hear their prey scuttling around in the forest. This image also depicts Dipsy with breasts and an antenna that looks more like a unicorn's horn. That brings up some questions that probably should never be pondered about the gender of the Teletubbies. Each of them has an antenna, which makes sense because they're essentially walking televisions. When they receive transmissions, the antennae glow, suggesting that this is the purpose. However, 2 of them are rods and 2 of them are enclosed shapes. Stranger still, these 2 have masculine voices and these 2 have feminine voices. But Tinky Winky carries a purse, and Dipsy has a pimp hat. There is an answer to all of this confusion because Teletubbies has a narrator, who occasionally refers to them with phrases like her scooter or his hat. Making the decision to give Dipsy breasts in this animation a strange one, but then again, this whole thing is kinda strange. I mean, look at this clip I found.
3. Blow.
A more well-known animator, Meat Canyon, also did a Teletubbies horror cartoon. He depicts them as malnourished cave-dwelling cannibals who are actually just the endoskeletons of the creatures seen in the show, forced to put on these costumes and crawl to the surface to worship their sun god. Perhaps this is some kind of social commentary about how people who make kids programs like Teletubbies are slaves to the whims of little babies. Or more likely, Papa Meat just wanted to make a cool industrial metal type music video and decided to use these technicolored creatures as a backdrop, which seems to be the consensus of the comments. This other commenter described it as the type of crap that makes therapists need therapists. And that's why today's video is I'm kidding. There are a number of Teletubby horror videos out there. This VR video by Zoguguk puts us in the middle of a staticky broadcast from Teletubbyland, where the usually bright colors and bubbly characters are replaced with them marching with their heads down in black and white and suddenly disappearing. Moments later, Tinky Winky appears with blacked out eyes, charging at the viewer with an axe. The ending effect is pretty cheesy though. There are some interesting levels of meta-cinema going on here. Teletubbies is a show watched by children, and in each episode, they receive a broadcast transmission, and then they watch a video starring a group of children. So it's like an I'm watching you, you're watching me type of thing. Before each broadcast, their TVs do this shimmering effect, which represents static from an analog broadcast. And in this VR video, the whole thing is like a staticky old broadcast, but we're living in it. Almost as if our death is just some form of entertainment for some higher being. Also, I may have known this at some point, but I just realized they play each video twice. They show a clip, and then the Teletubbies ask for it to be played again.
Again.
And then they play the exact same clip again immediately in full. It's gotta be the most egregious form of filler that I've ever seen in a show that's already composed of a bunch of reused segments redistributed in several episodes. It just goes to show that babies are just really dumb people who will accept anything. Next, I came across a short film simply titled Teletubbies by Capital Gains' Henry Stickmin. It shows a little girl watching whatever this is, a much creepier version of the 90s television series, and she suddenly turns and sees one of the colorful creatures standing in her backyard. Shortly after, her mom finds her abducted, and though we do not see what was done to her, we can hear her mom's screams.
Emily?
Like the previous video, this is another short that blurs the lines between fiction and reality, and also demonstrates themes related to the ease at which kids could be brainwashed by seemingly innocent programming. But the next video I found would lead me down the rabbit hole into Teletubby conspiracies. This one, by A Vendetta for You, reimagines Teletubbies as images from an 80s horror film. I like the intense Milesian stare of the sun baby, and the wooden face and empty eyes of Poe. There are multiple variations of this found on different channels across YouTube, with AI-generated images of creepy characters set to unsettling music. These videos also depict 2 other characters that I wasn't familiar with, the bear and the lion. Turns out, these are references to an infamous banned episode of Teletubbies. The banned footage was brought back to light in February 2023 when Twitter account Horror for Kids, yes it was still called Twitter back then, posted a clip of it, claiming that the 1997 episode was banned after being considered too scary for its target audience, and contained age-inaccurate music, scary voices, dark tone, scary dialogue, as well as an ending chase scene. While many people mocked the parents who complained about the episode, some shared their own scarring memories. This traumatized me when I was a kid. I legit remember being terrified of it. It's the one vivid memory I have from being that young. Repressed memory unlocked. correct. One reply brought up the fact that the segments were reused in several episodes, which would suggest that several episodes had to be banned. I looked up a list of episodes on Wikipedia and found 13 episodes containing the lion and the bear, all over the first 2 seasons, meaning that the trauma may spread much further than we originally thought. But is this actually scary, or was this one of the first examples of the snowflake generation doing their thing? While the clip was edited to be less scary in the territories where it wasn't fully banned, luckily there is an official Teletubbies YouTube channel which uploaded the original version back in 2014. It actually has 21 million views, landing it in the top 20 for a channel with over 3,000 videos. Let's take a look. It starts with the 4-piece standing in the field, as they so often do, when this seemingly divine voice coming from nowhere echoes all around them.
It's the bear, and I'm coming.
I mean, it does sound like a voice you would hear in a haunted house, but honestly, none of the 4 of them are scared, so it doesn't make me think that I should be. They all sit down in anticipation of the bear, and it's just a 2D cutout of a cartoon bear on wheels. Other than the weather changing in every shot, there's nothing out of the ordinary going on yet. After goofing off for a while, the bear introduces the lion.
I'm the bear with brown fuzzy hair. I'm hiding from the lion.
But we all know that no bear would ever have to hide from a lion. Anyway, there's a lot of fanfare surrounding the lion's appearance. Notice how the clouds start moving really fast.
I am the scary lion with big scary teeth.
Okay, I can kind of see how like the littlest, tiniest babies might find that part kind of scary. Something about the wide eyes and smile makes the lion look kind of insane, and then the punch in on the face just emphasizes that. Also, what was that scream? What were they thinking? That just sounds like a man. That's probably the scariest part. After this, the lion just goes around looking for the bear and then chases it for a while. The noises it makes are weird, but not necessarily scary, IMO. And there are some pretty bad VFX right here, but ultimately that's it. I think even if it was a tiny bit scary for kids when the lion appeared, that it should not have been banned. Because we need to toughen these kids up. We can't just let them run around and cry and get things banned. And you wonder why we now have celebrities who get canceled for the stupidest reasons. I think it's time to bring back the paddle in schools. What, too far? Apparently the VHS and DVD releases contain both versions, so it's nice to see the creators sticking to their guns. While this is a very real legend about the show, there are a number of Teletubbies conspiracy theories that are not quite confirmed. And this is where I came across an old friend. Our old pal who we haven't seen in a couple months. The infamous Coraline theorist, Maria from Random Critique, which turns out that's not her first name.
Where did you get that? Because the only video that I've actually introduced myself in, I say my name is Alicia.
So I didn't find that video, but the email address that she has listed on her channel has her middle name in it, so I assumed that was her name. And I got owned. Anyway, she did a Teletubbies one, though this one doesn't seem to be her theory, but rather just one she found online and she's commentating on it. I was able to do some research and found the original post from 2013 by user Scarlet Siren on Quota. This is the image used in the post. So you know it's gonna be good. The theory claims that the show is based on 4 children from a Bulgarian mental institute for kids with abusive caretakers. One of the kids was named Lala, and she had a facial deformity that made it look like she was always smiling, which could explain why the Teletubbies are seemingly always happy. She also couldn't speak Bulgarian, so the orderlies thought that she was speaking gibberish, which explains the Teletubbies' broken speech patterns. She spent her time dancing in her room to no music to cope with the isolation, and her skin was turning a sickly yellow from the lack of sunlight, explaining both Lala's yellow pigmentation and her love of dancing. The other characters are also represented by mental patients in a similar way. Tinky Winky's purple comes from one time when he was locked outside by the caretakers, giving him a purple-hued frostbite. Dipsy's green coloration came from a lifetime of the caretakers forcing him to eat food that made him ill. And Po, or as she's known at the Institute, Paulina, was a burn victim, causing her skin to look red. I think it goes without saying that I don't believe any of this, but I do like it. It's pretty creative. But I'm not a huge fan of the next part. And neither was Alicia.
This is why I think it's fake though, because they mention how each kid dies, right? Well, in this next part of the theory, they all die in the exact same way, in the exact same day.
So long story short, the kids' only source of distraction from the abuse that they received at the asylum was watching TV, and the director of the place was planning to get rid of the TVs in order to save on the electricity bill. In the past, the kids would eat their favorite toys to hide them from the orderlies and thought they could do the same. But as the original post explains, the televisions were only small enough to fit inside their stomachs, but they were still too big to eat. The next day, a horrific sight met the carers. The room had a heavy stench of blood. In the middle of the room lay Polina, Donka, Lala, and Toate. They'd each clawed out their own stomach. The blood-stained television sat inside their ripped-out bellies, which is just a little too ridiculous. Not that the story was believable in the first place, but I just liked it better when it was at least in the realm of reality. I think if the author had just said that the televisions were the only source of happiness for the kids, that would have been enough. Maybe they even grabbed onto the television sets when the orderlies tried to remove them and just held them close to their stomachs until the TVs were pried from their arms and dragged away. I also think it would have been cool if some of the other aspects of the children's show were incorporated into the story. Like, maybe the creator of Teletubbies worked at the institution to make some extra cash in college, and he was the janitor, so he's represented by the vacuum cleaner character Nunu. Maybe there was a loud PA system at the asylum that explains the speakers seen in Teletubbyland. I think this theory was a fun concept, but the story could have been a lot better. And so could the next one, about how the Teletubbies are actually biogenetically engineered slaves. This next one comes from a YouTube channel called KMac Time, and he refers to it as a cartoon conspiracy theory.
Today we're going to talk about one of the lamest cartoons, in my opinion, of all time.
Do you know what a cartoon is? This is not a cartoon. It's clearly live action. You're not off to a great start here, K-Mac. So this one is just a theory he found on Reddit, which is actually just a screenshot of a deleted 4chan post. Teletubbies is a dark, Orwellian nightmare about a genetically engineered slave class being systematically trained to become part of our society. The evidence is that their lives are controlled from sunrise to sunset by three things: the voices from the underground, the vacuum cleaner Nunu, who watches over them, and the pinwheel. For context, in the show, the pinwheel is a big windmill that sometimes emits pink sparkles, similar to the static pattern seen on their TVs. When this happens, it triggers one of their broadcast transmissions. The way the show keeps cutting back to the windmill during these sequences is honestly pretty weird and kind of hypnotic. The post goes on to explain: the pinwheel is the true power in Teletubbyland, a mystical godhead that the simple-minded Tubbies worship. When the pinwheel spins, the Tubbies stop whatever they're doing and run to the top of a hill. Here, they perform a ritual for the gods in the sky, trying to curry favor. Only one can be chosen. When that one is chosen, they are blessed by having the genetically implanted bioelectric television screen in their abdomen activated. A follow-up post describes the clips shown in these broadcasts as indoctrination films, and the Sun Baby as a form used to hide the watchful, totalitarian eyes that peer out from the darkness. Those of you who have been with me for a while will likely recognize this tactic. Whenever one of these theorists has a hole in his or her theory, it always seems to be explained away as, oh, well, that's what the villains actually want you to think. It's actually some form of deception. Finally, their underground bunker is likened to an alien spacecraft, which I actually kind of like this part because they do look like aliens. And the 4chan user wraps things up by warning us about the future of genetic manipulation. Teletubbies is about the end of the world. Very nice, very nice. Obviously, this is not meant to be taken too seriously, but again, I have to note how this kind of ties into this theme that we've seen in some of the other Teletubby horror media. This theme of the viewer actually unwittingly being the viewed. Babies think that they're watching Teletubbies, but the Tubbies are watching them. The Teletubbies believe that they are the viewers, but there's actually some higher power watching them. Which is a perfect segue into our next topic. Eldertubbies can best be described as a series of drawings started by an artist named Jars Art. It's inspired by a genre of eldritch horror art called I'm Sorry John, in which artists online depicted Garfield as a monstrous Lovecraftian entity dealing horror towards his owner from the comics, John Arbuckle. While I'm Sorry John satirizes one of the most common jokes in Garfield, ones where Garfield tortures John, Eldertubbies satirizes the surreal nature of Teletubbies, which often goes unquestioned by its young fan base and attempts to inspire intelligent analysis of the insanity. It started with this image on February 22, 2020, accompanied by a caption containing a story about a lost hiker pulled from the trail by a familiar song, only to come face to face with this creature, as he realizes it's the Teletubbies theme song. Over the next month, Jars went on to create the Council of Eldertubbies, including Tinky Winky the Greeter, Dipsy the Curious, Lala the Maternal, and Poe the Sovereign. As Jars went along, he created a master lore document and even created new characters, including 3 original Eldertubbies not seen in the show and a moon baby to bring balance to the sun baby. I'm not going to show them all here, but I will link his IG in the description if you want to go check out more of the art and dig deeper into the Eldertubbies lore. The most interesting Eldertubbies character, though, is Nunu, who he created an entire video for. It tells the tale of Nunu's separation from the Tubbies as they became wise enough to look after themselves.
The machine abandoned the Tubbies and wandered the outskirts of the forest in search of the vitality and life it so severely craved. Over time, it consumed pounds upon pounds of flesh and grew larger and larger.
The story is the logical next step to the actual Nunu character, a vacuum cleaner whose only purpose in life seems to be cleaning up after the Teletubbies. Once they've outgrown a need for him, what is he supposed to do with his life? He's left feeling empty inside, but he's always been empty inside. He's a vacuum. Eldertubbies also primarily takes place in nighttime settings, which again is very different from the show and adds a layer of surreality. Eldertubbies goes much deeper than anyone thought possible with the source material, and then goes much deeper than that. Again, I'm noticing this motif of the watchers being the watched, and those watchers being watched. It seems like there's always a higher power in Eldertubbies. And perhaps this comes full circle with us, the internet users viewing this content who can then go on to create new Teletubby horror creations. The cycle repeats itself. And to bring this video full circle, as I mentioned at the beginning, Teletubby horror is something that emerged during the era of creepypasta and mascot horror. Creepypasta are short horror stories and digital urban legends copied and shared on the internet, like Slenderman and Jeff the Killer. And mascot horror is a video game genre known for turning innocent child-friendly mascots into nightmarish antagonists. Think Five Nights at Freddy's and Bendy and the Ink Machine. So it's only fitting that our final entry would take a page from each genre. Just as Eldertubbies was an offshoot of the more popular I'm Sorry John, our final item was inspired by an indie survival horror game called Slender the 8 Pages, which was released in 2012. It was wildly successful and saw many imitators, one of which was Slendytubbies, which came out at the end of that year on 12/12/12. The game is basically borderline a reskin of Slender the 8 Pages, but instead of collecting 8 pages, you have to collect 10 custards. Tubby custard is, to the best of my knowledge, one of the 2 foods that the Teletubbies eat in the show, the other being Tubby toast. I am now going to play a clip with the actual unedited noises that the custard machine makes, just so you can suffer as I did.
Tubby custard, Tubby custard.
Throughout the map, you can find each of the Tubbies gruesomely murdered, all while being stalked by the eternally screaming Tinky Winky, who will jump scare you if he gets close. Oh my god, is that a reference to the banned episode? Also, Nunu seems to have lost his mind again. If you successfully collect all 10 custards, it just shows you this, and then that's it.
I won!
Is what I would say if that was the end of the Slendytubbies franchise. Fans would have to wait a year and a half before getting to explore more of Teletubbyland, which is pretty long considering how quickly these indie horror games are usually turned around. The opening menu features footage from the banned episode, and the game would feature 8 times the content. New maps included Secret Lair, Secret Center, which I guess is different, Teletubby Lake, Satellite Station, Teletubbyland, Outskirts, Training Maze, and Tubbycraft, which is literally just the original game in a Minecraft art style. The game's original website describes a story continuing the story of the first game, which was not really a story, but whatever. 5 long years have passed since the events of Teletubbyland. You, the white Teletubby, accurate, have been trying to figure out what happened. After 5 years of research on the Teletubby custards you collect from Teletubbyland, you believe that the custards are genetically modified. You travel to Teletubbyland once again, which is now destroyed and swamp-like, to collect more custards for your research. Only this time, you find a secret entrance inside the Teletubby house, which leads to an unknown passage. Isn't it nice to see Slendytubbies II leaning on the fan-generated lore, like the genetically engineered slaves theory? That's basically what this game is all about. You begin to believe that Tinky Winky took a bad dose of the genetic Teletubby custard. You fear that Teletubbies are not born, they are made. There is only one way to know for sure. However, you must collect all the custards to find out the truth. Wow, I had no idea that Slendytubbies II had this much lore, much less any. There are 6 new antagonists this time around. The newborns, which are gray little Teletubbies that wander around crying, a headless, chainsaw-wielding Dipsy, a mutated variant of Dipsy known as Lake Dipsy, the janky, long-armed Lala, the speedy, sneaky Poe with raptorial arm blades, and the buffed-out evolution of Tinky Winky, Tinky Tank. However, Slendytubbies II is kind of broken. Most of the enemies can't get to you if you just keep moving, but let's face it, the gameplay isn't really the point here. The real point is finding the Rick Astley Easter egg. And though it took another 3 years, the developer of Slendytubbies did not give up on his audience. In July 2017, CZsWorld released the official trailer for Slendytubbies III, and it looked unlike anything we had seen before in the franchise. Slendytubbies III has a full story spanning back to before the first game, cutscenes, dialogue options, and branching narratives based on the choices you make in the game. Story-wise, it's basically a reboot of the series told in 4 chapters, starting with Chapter 0, where there's a short introduction introducing the Teletubby Guardian, a white tubby designed to monitor the test group of 4 Teletubbies in secret. There will be Slendytubby III spoilers going forward. Again, not something I thought I would ever say. If you want to avoid them, you can skip this chapter. You play as Po, making tubby custard for your friends, but that night, you discover Tinky Winky sabotaging the machine. This is where the path branching begins, but basically Po discovers that Dipsy and Lala have been killed, and Tinky Winky is transformed into a monster who catches her and hangs her in a tree. In Chapter 1, you take over as the White Teletubby Guardian, and the stage is set for a scenario very similar to the original Slendytubbies game. Your job is to collect the custards because you believe that they're infected and therefore responsible for Tinky Winky's rampage. However, before collecting the last one, Tinky Winky consumes it for himself, turning him into Tinky Tank and setting the stage for the level scene in Slendytubbies II. I'm definitely giving creativity points for the way that the third game takes the basic gameplay levels from its predecessors and recontextualizes them by placing them in a more comprehensive story. This probably wasn't intentional, but it almost kind of mirrors the creation of the original kids show, where each episode was a string out of a series of segments put together. In Chapter 2, you're given the option to flee to the mountains or the cave, both new locations stalked by their own original tubby monsters. From there, you can reach the outskirts from the second game, where you collect more custards and can potentially be stalked by the infected Lala. You cut through the satellite station, hoping to get in touch with the military, but find the tubbies working there have been massacred. One survivor named Ron, because I guess the other Teletubbies who aren't test subjects just have normal names, tells how a monster came into the station and took out all of his co-workers. This turns out to be Dipsy, who chases you with a chainsaw, which you can take after defeating him. After moving on to the secret center, you encounter Nunu, and it's revealed that he was behind the infected custards to intentionally bioengineer more powerful Teletubbies. He sabotages you with a boss battle against the voice from the speakers seen around Teletubbyland, which turn out to be the top of a giant robot known as the Announcer. It's a battle of epic proportions, but the Guardian is able to slay the mechanical beast and call for military backup. But, according to Nunu, it's already too late, because an army of infected newborns is already being engineered. If you refuse to join him, you'll be confronted with one more challenge, the Infected Po, a 3-phase boss battle where you're required to cut down the zombie of the Red Teletubby, the Dead Space-inspired Raptorial form, and finally, the spider-like final form. There are 4 possible endings to the game, but the quote-unquote good ending has you beating Po and sawing Nunu in half. And of course, the military Teletubbies arrive after the battle, just in time to see the rise of the newborn army. And that's where we're left with Slendytubbies III. There was a planned DLC for the game called the Apocalypse DLC. The project was mostly handed off to a new developer named Santi-kun, but the project had to be cancelled, supposedly because the community was too toxic, according to Slendytubbies wiki. Lol. However, there was a demo released where you and the military storm the sewer system to try to get to the machine making the newborns. It contains new hallucinations, a backstory about what happened to the humans, and a mysterious black shadow tubby. The strangest thing about the Slendytubbies franchise is that the televisions in their stomachs are never really used for anything. The Guardian Tubby uses a night vision camera and normal computer monitors in the third one, so maybe the DLC would have explored the true purpose of the tummy TVs. Hopefully one day the project will be revisited. But what was your favorite piece of Teletubby horror media? Was it the Eldertubbies? Was it the sound of Tinky Winky's scream? Or is it this cursed video of him reacting to Skibbity Toilet?
What's going on?
Yeah, boy.
Be sure to let me know in the comments. Or don't. Remember to click my Trainwell, formerly Copilot link, go.trainwell.net/CZsWorld to get 14 days free with your own personal trainer. If you like Slendytubbies, then check out that video on the left for the complete history of Freddy Fazbear from FNAF. And for more terrors broadcasted to your screen, make sure you subscribe to CZsWorld for new horrors every week, ring the death bell for all notifications, and I will see you in the next one. Assuming we both survive.